Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Coyle. I work with Zite Manager globally and have done so for the past few years. And I've been working with Zite since it started with IOM and Cox's Bazar in 2020, towards the end of the year. And I'm joined in this training series by Harris and Candice. Harris, if you want to introduce yourself first.
Hi everyone. Great to see you all here. My name is Harris. I currently work with Global, supporting on site issues as well as other broader issues. And previously to this, I worked with Ukraine CCCM. That's where I started Zite, using Zite. So that was in 2023. So I've been using Zite for around 3 years and started in Ukraine.
Cool. And Candice?
Hi everyone, my name is Candice and I'm the Zite Manager Analyst is probably my area of expertise, but I've been working in Zite probably since 2021 when we started in Cox's Bazar and have been on board ever since. Over to you, Danny.
Great, thanks. So this is our IM training series. Before we begin, I'm just gonna go over some general guidance for how these courses are gonna work. So these trainings that you're a part of now on Teams are going to be uploaded to an e-learning platform and be part of a larger e-learning series that we're doing. The benefit of joining in person is that you have the chance to ask questions as we go. I'm going to ask if you haven't already, you can introduce yourself in the chat. And as we go through the slides and the presentations, it would be great if you have any questions just to drop them in the chat. And then at the end of every section in the lesson, we're going to ask those questions and provide answers wherever we can. We are going to stick a little bit to the content though. So if you ask a question that's covered in a future lesson or cover somewhere else, we may just defer you later just because there's a lot to cover and it's easier if we go through things sequentially. Okay, so for this introduction lesson, we're really just going to go over some general orientation to what Zite Manager is, how it's been designed, cover some basic key terms, and in general talk about the course and its structure, just to give you some sense of how this is going to progress over the weeks. So today we're going to cover, what Zite Manager is as both a program and a technology, the objectives and scope of what we do, the overview of the course, key terms, and then we're going to do a demo of just logging into Zite. Again, I'm going to just note that I know many of you have lots of experience in Zite. You know how to do many things already, but we are presenting these lessons just as if you know nothing to kind of help everyone because everyone is at different points of learning in terms of how much they've used the tool. Okay, so let's begin. I'm going to talk a little bit about what Zite Manager is, and I think the easiest way to explain it is that Zite Manager has kind of started as both a technology, so it refers to the application that we use globally called Zite Manager, but it also is now progressively, being used to refer to a set of standards, values, practices that we think are really important in improving humanitarian operations. So it's hard to say that Zite is one without the other. Throughout the course, we're going to try and be as clear as possible what is about the application, about what you need to do in order to make something work or to use a feature. And then separately, we're also going to be clear when we are giving best practice. So best practice is best practice. It's optional. You can ignore it. But usually we're advising you to do those things for good reasons and a lot of experience we have working with data. Okay, so a little bit about the history and development of Zite and Zite Manager. Zite Manager is an open source software. It's also called Zite. And it's developed by a company who's also called Zite. So we may use the word Zite Manager and Zite interchangeably to refer to the software. It's undergoing ongoing development. So it's kind of growing, developing. Every quarter, you'll probably see changes, new features, and things like this. It's actually been under development for 10 years now. It originally started under the name FieldSite with UNOPS in 2015 in Nepal. And it's still supported today by the same kind of set of people and company. They're called Zite. They're a small software company based out of Nepal. If you're interested in them, you can go to their website. One of the things we've fought really hard through over the course of our development is really trying to make Zite a tool that anyone can use. Obviously, there are always costs associated with tools and hosting and servers and things like this, but there's kind of no technical restrictions for anyone who wants to adopt or deploy Zite. Okay, so when we talk about Zite Manager, all our country partners, so if you're using Zite Manager, it means that you kind of have signed up, or your program managers have signed up to be part of our global partnership. And that is covered in a governing terms of reference that we have, and we're going to post online and as a follow-up to this video. And it's just to note that, if you're attending these trainings, it's likely because you're either a country focal or an information manager, and it means that you probably have a responsibility to help ensure compliance with the TOR and the relevant policies included there. This is not referring to like best practice, but more just rules around data governance, data protection, and kind of general agreements we've made in order to keep kind of ethical and compliant usage of the tool throughout all our operations. Another note is just that Zite Manager is supported both by your country programs. So country programs do annually provide some sort of contribution towards the general operation of Zite and the Secretariat. But we also try and essentially fundraise to support the initiative. And it's usually a combination of both that gets us through the year. Okay, so we're going to cover a little bit about what the Zite Manager Secretariat support. When I talk about the Secretariat, I'm really talking about the kind of global operations and cluster governing team that exists in headquarters. Currently, that's Clementine Favier and Bruce Spires. But I'm also talking, the Secretariat itself is really comprised of 3 individuals right now, Candice, myself, and Harris. And we support on a range of things. So some of those things are just onboarding new staff and countries who are adopting Zite. We're also engaged in developing global standard systems and best practices. In particular, we're very concerned with things that are being used across multiple countries. So things like community feedback mechanisms or service maps. We're trying to bring those into a kind of harmony across all our operations. We're also involved with the technical coordination of the developer on roadmaps and bugs. So this is really getting feedback from the countries and prioritizing what, if anything, we can build next or change in order to make everyone's lives easier or better in Zite. We also focus on ensuring compliance to relevant governing policies. Now, this is a range of policies, including our own TOR, but that includes IOM's data protection standards as the hoster of Zite platform. It also includes things like let's say softer policies related to IASC, or that might even be your in-country governing standards and policies from your own humanitarian responses. So we're here to help with all of that, and we also take responsibility for some of that, especially the more global policies or organization-wide policies. We also are involved in producing analytical outputs. That's primarily Candice's role within the team. And you may be familiar with the different products that she is helping country programs produce. And then kind of as last 2 things, we do a lot of capacity development. This kind of training series is part of that. As you probably know, we also do a lot of ad hoc training and support to countries. And that support often comes with direct operations support, the last point. So many times we step in when there's rotation of staff for surge capacity, or when you just need additional IM support, developing a system, or making various changes. Okay, so this is just kind of a graph showing 3 different roles. So in the first column, it's you, the audience of the training, and then in the middle pillar, it's referring to us globally, and then the last pillar is the developer. You'll see some things like compliance are shared across all 3 of us, but that actually each entity is responsible for kind of different things within the realm of work and partnership. I'm going to cover the things that relate most to you, which is compliance with the TOR and all relevant policies and standards. That's everyone's responsibility and kind of obligation. But you also share responsibility for reporting technical issues, managing your own data and users, and then obviously requesting operations support and capacity development. So we really want to put that responsibility on you to find out, to take ownership over what you're managing within your own operation. And then obviously we always ask and hope that everyone, provides suggestions for how we can continue to improve and develop Zite Manager. Okay, so that was the first chapter. I'm going to hold space for questions. Harris, do we have any questions on the first chapter?
So far, there are no questions.
Cool. Yeah, I figured today is pretty straightforward, so I wouldn't guess there's too much coming up. On chapter 2, we're going to talk about Zite Manager's objective and scope. So as I mentioned, it's a technology and a best practice. So when it comes to our kind of technological ambitions, we really wanted to provide a no-code solution for common IAM challenges related to our operations, right? There are a lot of just similar issues, similar problems, similar technical constraints that we're all dealing with. And, even though one IM might have a really great solution for that in one place, because of the way technology works, if we're all using different solutions, it then is really hard to create sustainability, to create standards, and also to just replicate that solution across different places, even though it's the same challenge or it's the same problem we're dealing with. Another ambition we had was really to just improve productivity and efficiency of data management. We see a lot of not time being wasted, but extra time or more time than needed being spent dealing with those challenges that we're talking about in the first point. Some of them are better, some of them maybe are slower, but we really just across the board wanted to make things faster, easier, more efficient as much as possible, taking a lot of inspiration from corporate sector tools. And then we also wanted to lower the skill ceiling. So we wanted to make it easy for you to do certain things that would otherwise be more difficult or require more, let's say, technical knowledge. And so Zite is doing a lot of things in the background that you may not even be aware of, but you might become aware through the course as we progress. And then when it comes to best practices, I think the biggest and most obvious thing we do is really we want to create the appropriate level of standards, right? We don't want to create, let's say, pie in the sky standards or standards that are really hard to achieve. We want to create something that's very implementable, and we want to take or share responsibility with you for implementing the standards that we create. So we are going to cover a little bit of those throughout the course, but generally speaking, a lot of that will just be outside. And if you ever want to see the standards that we've developed globally, just ask us and we'd be happy to share them with you. Okay, so a little bit about the application at a high level. Again, we're going to spend this whole course talking about all its features and things, but I would say this is like the top line that we often share with donors or a wider community, which is that Zite is a data management tool. It's used to create, manage, and automate operational processes. So it's not intended for like a specific use case. It's based on ODK forms, and it's compatible with any existing ODK form. So if you have an ODK form and it's working in ODK, it should 100% work in Zite, and that is indeed what we see and do on a regular basis. It can be used offline and online. It has both a web application and a mobile device. And generally speaking, we are envisioning that it's a tool used for humanitarian operations. So we're kind of imagining that as our audience, and that's the set of challenges and set of constraints that we're working with when we talk about operations in Zite. And then it adds a bunch of features basically to ODK. So ODK is a great tool. We're going to talk a lot about that in a dedicated lesson, but it has a lot of things that we would want added, and Zite is kind of aiming to add those additional features and functionality to ODK. Okay, we are going to talk briefly about what Zite is not, and this kind of crops up in different places, and you may hear this as a response from us when you ask for certain things. So Zite is not an everything application. We're not trying to use Zite to replace every tool that you have at your disposal. We want Zite to be used appropriately for like a range of functions that we feel are kind of related to, again, that broad mandate of data collection and management. So it's not an analytical tool. We're not trying to use Zite to produce analytical outputs, to produce fancy dashboards or reports or publications. We would use other tools for that. Additionally, it's not really designed to be an assessment or a survey tool. Like ODK works great for that. Zite is really trying to complement ODK to turn it more into an operations tool, which we'll talk about in a moment. Lastly, it's not really designed for a single purpose in mind. So Zite can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, Zite is a set of features. It's a set of functionality. How you use those things is up to you. So the analogy I often use is Zite is like, a toolbox, and you can use a toolbox to build a shed, a house, to, repair furniture in your living room, Really how you use those tools is up to you. It's not really designed with just like one thing in mind or one activity. And it's up to you to be creative and think about how you can deploy what Zite has to solve the problems that you're engaged with. It is limited by the environments where we imagine humanitarians work. What I mean by this is that a lot of times there are great features, there's great new technology, being developed in the world. We are highly limited by the bandwidth we have available. So oftentimes we're working in remote environments or environments where the internet is not, the best or strong even. And as a result, that really hampers some of how we build the technology in Zite and what we're able to do. We're also limited by the funding for development. So I think, between the two, between having like limited bandwidth and limited funds, we really have a kind of a slow development cycle where we're not able to build a lot of features or even make a lot of changes in one go. But over time, I think we've been able to do quite a bit. So on the development of Zite, picking up from that point, generally speaking, we manage a 3 to 6 month roadmap that we update twice a year based on suggestions from users. This isn't really a formal roadmap, but if you're ever interested, you can always approach us and ask what we're working on, and we'd be happy to share with you. And generally, we prioritize new features or work based on their technical complexity, how much impact it will have on our work. So if something is very impactful, obviously we want to prioritize it and do it sooner. And then also we're kind of always thinking about how many people are going to benefit from something. So obviously if 10 countries really need a feature, we're more likely to prioritize that than if one country requires a feature. We're always open to suggestions and thoughts. We do want your ideas for how to make Zite better. Yeah, and I think many of you who've worked with Zite for multiple years will know that the app has changed radically, I would say, over the past 5 years, at least since I've started working with it. And it's also just a note on this that the things you see between the videos and what you actually see when you log in, they might be a bit different because, as I said, depending on when you're watching these videos, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, we may have changed certain features, not probably radically or completely, but just maybe the user interface is always a work in progress. Okay. Any questions on that, Harris?
No questions over here.
Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this course and how it's going to be structured. So we're really envisioning this course can be for anyone working with Zite Manager or managing a project in Zite. We're going to talk about what that means. In particular, we're really targeting information managers who manage the settings in Zite or a Zite project or managing data for whole projects. So I think all of you, if we sat down and we talked at length about what you do, you probably have a lot of overlapping responsibilities, but there's always, just because of the different contexts you work or what you're doing in Zite, you're going to be using some of the same features differently, or you're going to be using different features altogether to do different things. And that's okay. We're going to go comprehensively through everything to really kind of even out the knowledge that you already have, or bring you up to that knowledge if you've never worked in Zite. For prerequisites to this course, we're kind of imagining that you definitely have a basic knowledge of data and Excel. Also, I would say is really beneficial will be some knowledge of Open Data Kit basics. So that means how to build forms in Open Data Kit, how Open Data Kit works, things like this. Also, we may cover a bit of analytical tools in a lesson on that, but we're not going to really teach you how to use Power BI or things like this. The reason for that is there are already great courses on Excel, on ODK, on Power BI, and those courses are going to be much better than what we can offer. So we're really going to stick to Zite and maybe how to use Zite in relation to those other tools, but we're not going to be talking or teaching how to use those other tools at length. So if you're missing that knowledge, we are going to give you some resources to go and educate yourself if that's what you want to do. Or hopefully you already have some of that basis that you can just pick up this lesson and take it immediately. Okay, so part of this series comes with the option for certification. So I should be clear that certification for us is to demonstrate that you have an advanced understanding of Zite. It's not a requirement. We're not saying that just because you attend these sessions, you have to go through certification or even attempt it. We want you to join in a way that feels useful to you. So it's possible, or it's okay for us if you feel like you've been doing maybe one of the lessons for the past 2 years in Zite and you don't feel like you need to attend that lesson, that's totally fine for us. As I said, we want you to find benefit in this. Certification is sort of for us to create a way in which you can demonstrate a really complete knowledge of Zite's features and functionality, so that we can say, yep, you've gone through this full course, and we feel confident that we can now hand over maybe larger responsibilities to you in Zite, or that we know that you know certain problems that may occur when you're managing a project, or just best practices in general. So the way we're doing this is after each lesson, including this one, there's a set of quizzes that are probably anywhere between like 10 and 20 questions. And you can take those quizzes to demonstrate that you've kind of followed along. You may be able to pass some of the quizzes without even attending the lessons, especially if you've been working in Zite extensively already. Generally speaking, we need to see a pass score of 90%, and you will be able to reattempt the quiz if you didn't get it the first time. So we're not trying to be overly strict, but that said, we have decided that the quizzes are not designed to be so easy that everyone can pass without really following along in detail about some of the features and functionality. Okay, so what are we going to cover? The structure of this is that each lesson is going to focus on a set of features in Zite, not specific use cases. So we're not going to spend time teaching like how we implement a community feedback mechanism, or how we, implement site monitoring in Zite. That's really, I think, kind of the subject of a separate course or a separate series of lessons. What this is for is to teach you about just the raw tools that we have at our disposal, what they're used for, how to use them, and why you might use them. Like, so different scenarios in which something may be useful or may not be useful. And then lastly, we're going to cover the technical details about them. So like, what technically do you need to know if you want to use that feature in your project or in your work? This is the overview of the lessons that we have so far. We're kind of currently in process of finishing them, so they might change a little bit in nature, but generally speaking, I think these will be the lesson titles. I think all of them are pretty clear in terms of what they cover if you know Zite. And as I said, if you feel like you've been, for example, using the mobile application a lot for several years and you don't need to attend that one, that's totally okay with us. You can even take the quiz to see if you already have that knowledge, and then based on the quiz results, decide whether you want to, view that lesson or not. Great. And then, as I said, alongside of the features and functionality, we are going to cover best practices, and that's for information managers generally. That's for humanitarian operations, but that's also for kind of working in Zite. So there's a lot of Zite specific stuff where you may not need to do something if you're working outside of Zite, but working in Zite means that you would get additional benefit or kind of uses if you adjust your general data management practices. And we're going to cover a little bit of that today. Okay, so the big one is this, as I said, I've started to draw a distinction between assessment and surveys and operations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what operations data is and the challenges that are associated with it. So when I talk about operations data, I'm really talking about data that's part of systems, processes, and workflow related to humanitarian operations. What this means is that I'm talking about, something other than I have done a survey or I have done an assessment and now I'm done, right? We're really thinking about operations data as data that is living, that has to be managed, that has like different things that are happening as a part of whatever is being collected. So an example of that might be a referral, right? A referral is not, I've recorded the referral and now my job is done. That's really the beginning of a process through which that information needs to be shared, needs to, receive information back from someone, and then be actioned maybe even further in our operations. It's generally data that's related to like larger objectives or processes, whereas survey data is very much, once we've collected that information, that step of collection is done, and that data maybe is processed, maybe is cleaned, maybe is then produced into a report. But in generally, the data is much more static if we think about it. And again, a lot of our best practice is going to really focus on this operations data, which is different than best practices related to surveys or assessment data processes and work. And I made this little table to try and help us think about these differences. So operations data, as I said, is often collected continuously. So if we have referrals, there's not, a period of time where we say, well, in January, we're doing referrals and in February, we're not. We're receiving referrals on an ongoing basis, where we might be making, activity reports every time we finish an activity. Whereas assessments or surveys, it's often the case that you're running an assessment for only 2 weeks and then you're done. And then that data is no longer being collected, and it also allows you to work with that data in a different way. Survey teams also have often dedicated enumerators who are often part-time, whereas our operations data usually comes from our core, program team members, and it's, as I said, they're doing their jobs day in, day out. There's never a time in which they would probably stop, their operation, right? Operations data often needs to be shared or reviewed with a wider set of people, right? Whereas assessment data will often be reviewed maybe by one analyst or a small team of people. Operations data, as I said, a good way of thinking about it is part of a larger objective. The objective of recording an activity report, it may be that we're building a house or building a facility, and we're recording information along the way about how that construction happened, photos of it, how many people were involved in the construction. All of that might be for monitoring and evaluation. That could be for, just our obligations to donor reporting and internal compliance, right? There's a lot of other purposes related to that data collection. Whereas when we do assessment data, we're really thinking about producing an assessment report or a product that's very discrete and usually finite. And in this operations data, as a result, has much longer lifespan, right? If we're talking about activity report data, we need to keep that data indefinitely, really, to record, what activities have been done, within a given program. Yeah, and then I would say, another key part that really relates to best practices when we talk about operations data, automation, efficiency, it really helps and it really, matters a lot, especially if you think about, hey, we're going to be doing, 1,000 referrals this year. If we can save 15 minutes off each of those, that adds up to be a lot. Whereas, in an assessment or a survey, we're really trying to get things correct 100%. We might put in extra time and energy to make sure, the wording of all the questions is correct. And we also have a lot of time to clean that data, to review that data, to process it, which you don't necessarily have when it comes to your operations data, right? Because it's coming in on a kind of continuous basis. You need to be continuously managing it in order to stay on top of your work. Cool. Okay, was there any questions on that? You're going to hear a lot more of that throughout the course. That's just a introduction.
There was one request, more than a question, by
Mhm.
Naveed from Qatar, who asked whether, regarding Power BI, could you share some resources for training on Power BI, I'm presuming?
Yeah, absolutely. In our lesson on working with operations data, we're going to talk about analytical tools, and we'll be for sure directing you whenever we talk about these other tools to resources that helped us learn about those tools. Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, I was very new to Power BI myself, and everything I've learned is from great courses and YouTube videos and other resources like this. So for sure, those will be included in the lessons where we cover that subject. Cool.
Yep, great.
Okay, so we're now going to kind of crash course you in some key terms and the general structure of Zite. This is not going to cover these subjects kind of in depth, but just start to familiarize yourself with the language we use and also to get us all on the same page with the language. So Zite is comprised of kind of two distinct parts. One is a mobile application. The mobile application is Android only, so it's not supported in the what is it called, Macintosh store, whatever that is referred to as. It works
iOS.
yeah, iOS. So it works offline and it syncs with the server. So every time you have collected work offline, you can sync it and it will kind of update, submit everything that you've collected offline. And then kind of if you have data on the phone, it will also update that data accordingly based on whatever has changed. It supports a lot of the functions related to on-site data collection and management, but it does not support all the functionality and features of Zite. So it is kind of only partially doing some of the tasks, and the tasks that it does are really the stuff you might do when you're wherever you work in a remote area, in a village, in a camp, etc. And that's again intentional because in order for it to do everything, it would require much more internet. This is again in keeping with some of the constraints I mentioned earlier. The web application is available at that address. You can use it from any browser. It does require internet, and it does support all the functions and features of Zite. So if you want to do anything, everything is supported in the web app at that link. Okay, everyone in order to use Zite needs a user role and a set of user permissions. We do not permit sharing of usernames and passwords as part of the TOR. Harris is going to talk more about that in his lesson on user roles and management. The requirements for a user are just a username and a password. You don't even need an email. And that's again, because many of the people we work with in frontline humanitarian operations do not have emails, and that's okay for us, but they do need to have a username and password. And we're going to go over how to create those. Having an email is great. It allows you to recover your password and do other things, receive email notifications and things like this. But your email does not need to be your organization ID, so it does not need to be your IOM account. We do recommend that for if you are like a staff of a humanitarian organization, obviously to use your professional account, but it's not linked to your IOM ICT environment, just to be clear. So your passwords could be different and should be different and things like this. And then your user role associated with your account allows you to see and do different things. And we're going to cover that in more detail later. But for now, we're just going to let you know that it's recommended that you have a project manager role in at least one project for this training, because it's really going to allow you to open up that project that you're managing or part of, see the different features and functions, and kind of play around with them yourself. Okay, so Zite also has a project in a team structure. A project is basically where work takes place. It's a set of data collection and management processes. It's a set of users. It's a set of forms and sites and other settings. It's basically the main unit of work in Zite, and it's like a shared space for collaboration that people can have different, like full access or limited access over. Projects can be grouped into teams. I don't think anyone as part of this call or as a general practice is working at a teams level, but in the case that you have, let's say, an operation based out of Ethiopia, you may have like a shelter project and a CCCM project and a protection project, et cetera, doing different things. You can always be part of multiple projects. So for myself, I'm part of the different projects that we have active around the world. You may also be part of one project. That's also okay. A project is really where, let's say, the magic happens or the work happens in Zite. And it is set up to be decentralized like this so that we can have one project working one way and another project working another way. There's no restriction, like one project might have lots of different forms, lots of different processes, or it might have only one set of forms and one set of processes. How that's designed is up to you, and we're going to cover, what we think through when we do that later in the course. Each project will have a set of forms associated with it. When we say forms, we're just talking about ODK forms. So these are, again, the exact same forms that you would use with ODK and Kobo if you're using Kobo. And they're kind of compatible across all three systems. We really love ODK, to be clear. It's an amazing tool. It has so much functionality built into it. I really have yet to see another data collection tool be able to do as much as you can do in ODK. And we're really going to talk about how to leverage the power of ODK to make your work in Zite better throughout the course. We're going to cover this is the introduction to some basic kind of common information management terms that you'll hear from us. For those of you who are not familiar, a data field is when we mention this, it's referring to like a column in a table that contains similar information across all the rows. So for example, a data field could be name, meaning like the names of everyone in that table, or age, meaning the ages of everyone in that table, addresses, etc. A data field in Zite can have different sources, right? So you may have the name recorded in one form, like your username is going to be recorded in the user table, and so forth and so on. So it's important to think about not just data fields, but where that data is stored or where that data is coming from in any system that you work in. And just to keep in mind that the structure, the source, the naming of data fields really matters. That matters pretty much in any information management system. And we're going to talk about that in relation to a lot of the features throughout the lesson. Like really understanding the importance of that is going to make your life much easier and also avoid a lot of problems that can occur. Every data field, generally speaking, has an associated data type. What do we mean by data types? In the history of information management and kind of coding and software development, people have created kind of conventions around the different types of information that we may be storing in those data fields. So for example, we might have string information, which is just like text. So my name would be a string. We might have integers. So like my age might be an integer. I'm 39. It's a whole number, for example. And that's, opposed to floats or decimals where we allow decimal places. So obviously I can't be 39.5. I might be 39, 38, or 40. But a float, my height, right, could be, for example, down to the decimal point. Similarly, dates are formatted in a particular way just so that different systems can read them across multiple platforms, for example. Data types are not universal. Different systems may have like more specific or unique data types. Different databases support different kind of data types. It's important for you just to be aware that data types exist and also to think about familiarizing yourself with the supported data types. So for us, a big one is ODK, and ODK has some specific data types that structure how that data is stored and referenced. For example, ODK has a text data type, but it also has a select one and a select multiple, which store text data, but they store it in a particular way, and it has like certain rules and conventions around that. So it's already to start thinking about that as being very key to how you work in Zite and working in Zite effectively. We're also going to be using the phrase primary key a lot. So primary keys are also sometimes called universal unique identifiers, so UUIDs. It basically is, if you have a table, it is the way in which you can refer specifically to a row. And the only rule with primary keys is that they have to be unique. So you can't have two primary keys in a table that are the same. Primary keys are used across all sorts of database systems and information management systems because they're really useful for naming things, right? We don't want to, get confused when we say, oh, we're referring to Danny and there's two Dannys in a table, right? It's much more effective in terms of programming and information management to use a unique identifier or a primary key to reference the row of data or the specific record we're talking about. It's also really important in relating two different data sets to each other. So if we want to, look up locations or regions or sites, it's much better to use unique identifiers than names because names are often overlapping or have special characters and all sorts of other things that can create problems for our programming or whatever we're trying to do. Yeah, there are many unique identifiers. So pretty much anytime you're working with a data set, it is useful to think, what is the primary key for this data set? If it doesn't have a primary key, even thinking about creating one, a general best practice with primary keys that we're going to introduce now is that they should not contain spaces or special characters. This relates to often how systems read data, and special characters and spaces can impact basically the effectiveness at which you can match and read information. Special characters don't include hyphens and periods and underscores. These are often also part of primary keys, but that would include things like the @ symbol, exclamation points, question marks. These are more also avoided. Cool. So I have an example table here that just to kind of illustrate these points. This table has 6 fields. The fields are name, age, start date, organization, staff ID, and index. And they have different data types. So name is a string, field. It's just open text entry. It can include letters and numbers. Age is integer. It's going to contain a whole number. Start date is a date, and you'll notice that format is actually the ISO format. So that's the international format for how we record date information. So it goes backwards from biggest to smallest unit. So year, month, date. Organization, again, is open text entry. That might actually be a list somewhere. It might actually be restricted to only allow certain organizations' names. In this, I have IOM Acted NRC as the options. Staff ID, yeah, looks like it's another whole number, but actually, if you'll notice, the third row starts with 0023. So starting with 0, 0 is not actually allowed for integers because the preceding 0, 0 would mean nothing. So this is probably actually a text field, even though it's stored looking like a number, right? And you'll see next to it, I have an index, which goes up 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of you might think that the primary key could be the staff ID, but if you'll notice that I have different organizations in this table, and it may be that those organizations actually have similar staff IDs. So actually the primary key for this table is probably the index, just because it is possible that someone from IOM and NRC might have the same staff ID, which would then mean that staff ID is not a good primary key to use. So for this table, we would probably use index as a primary key. And as I said, if you're ever working with a data set that doesn't have a primary key, you can always put indexing on it, which is just like a sequential numbering of the rows. And you can always use that to reference the particular row you're referring to. So in this case, Candace Jones would be index 3, and that's how I could refer to that record in this table. Okay, I know that was a lot of terms and terminology, but any questions on that or anything I should go over again?
So as of now in the chat, we don't have any questions.
Great. Okay. So the last step of this introduction, and I think we may end a bit earlier today, just maybe a note on that. These sessions, some of them are going to be under an hour. Some of them are going to be probably about around an hour, and some of them are going to creep over an hour. As much as possible, we're gonna do our best to manage time, which is why I'm moving quite, let's say, at pace. But as I said, you'll have the recording. You'll be able to revisit this video as often as you want. But yeah, the reality is some features are more technical, require more explanation and unpacking in order to cover, and some are more easy, more straightforward, especially as your knowledge builds. Generally, a lot of the features work in a very similar way by design. Okay, so for this demo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in to Zite using my username and password that I've set up for this account. We're going to log into our IM training project, and we're going to just take a look around. Cool. Okay, so I have a username. This username I've just created for the purposes of this training, and I have my password. If you ever forget your password, if you have connected this account to your email, you can get your password reset over email. If you have no email associated with your account, you need to ask for an administrator to help you reset your password. Cool. So when you first log in, you're taken to what's called your My Dashboard page. The name of the page is usually right here in the top left. And this is where you'll see everything that this user account has done. You'll see that this user account actually hasn't done anything in the run up to this training. But you can kind of click through these various tabs and see a summary of what has been done. Before I take us to the project page, you'll also notice in the top right, you can go in and do things like edit your profile. So you can change various things related to your profile, like your name, your other profile information that's associated with it. Whether you receive email notifications, you can also change your password through this interface. Okay, but going back to our main navigation, to go to our project, you'll see that recently I visited this project. But if you don't see anything here, it's just because you've never visited a project before. So I'm going to go view all projects, which is going to take me to a list of the projects that I have access to. This account only has access to one project called the IM training series. So you'll see that if I click here, it takes me to my project dashboard. This is your main landing page for work in Zite. So, 99% of the time I'm going to my project page as the first point of order to do everything from, adding submissions, changing settings, exporting data. This is where you start. And you'll notice in the bottom right-hand corner, there's this question mark, and you'll see that it offers you some orientations that we've set up for you. So anytime you see that pink circle, you can click it, and it's going to offer you either like a tour around a various part of Zite, or it's going to offer you guidance over a specific feature. So we'll revisit this in a moment, but you can see if you wanted to, for example, find a case, it's going to start to guide you through that process. So if you need help, always try as a first point of action the pink circle with a question mark. On this page, you'll also find your site list. We're going to talk about what sites are in Zite, but it's basically the places that you're working and you're collecting data. And you'll see this complete list here. You'll also see the submissions that have been made. So these are referring to how many cases have been submitted. For this particular project, we've made 4 submissions just to start us off with. They're all in this first site on the list. You'll also see that as a part of Zite, your locations are going to be automatically mapped. You'll also see some basic metrics about your project. You'll see access to the reporting feature. We're going to talk more about what this is later. And you'll also see tasks associated with the project. So if you're managing data, reviewing data, collecting data, this is probably like the first point of order, and this is really where you would start to interact with your data. If you're a project manager, a lot of your work is going to be up here in the top right-hand corner under the settings section. So if you click here, this takes you to your project settings, and you'll see the full set of settings that you have access to customizing for your project. And really, this training course is going to go through section by section, tab by tab, what you can do on each of these different pages, what you can customize, what they enable you to do or kind of work with on your project. For now, we're just going to say that you can always change your project information here. Country is relevant. The country is going to just set when certain things happen for your project. So for example, if you want things to happen at midnight, it's going to pick, midnight Switzerland time. It's not going to pick, obviously, another time around the world. Okay, so that's actually it for today's demo. I think many of you are familiar with this page. Many of you have, as I said, worked in Zite for several years. But for now, we're going to call it there. Maybe are there any questions about anything I've shown you?
No questions on the chat.
Cool. I actually forgot to show you one thing. I'm going to go back to the settings, and you'll notice if you click the circle here, you can ask for a tour, which will offer you tours of the settings if you haven't checked those out. But you can also click complete guidance, and this will actually bring up complete written guidance for everything in Zite. So this is the actual technical guidance. We'll be covering a lot of this in the lesson, but don't feel bad if you forget. There are things in Zite I always need to look up before I use them. That's just like a normal part of information management work. So yeah, if you ever need to reference like particular technical details about how something works, it is written down in this section, and that is, I think it's searchable as well. So you can type in what you're looking for here. For example, if you need information about the bulk features, just typing that will give you a list of things. But yeah, otherwise, that is it for our demonstration today. I'm just going to go back and wrap this up and maybe just conclude by saying, is there any questions on the course, on the lessons? As a final point, as I said, we really want this to be like learn at your own pace. So if you can't make a training, if you feel like you already know the information that's going to be covered in the training, that's completely okay with us. A big point of our doing this is really just to create another way to learn about Zite, maybe that's a bit more systematic than what you've received in the past. Okay, and if no further questions here, so I think we can call it here for today. Hopefully we've stayed around time, and we'll see you next week when we start into what are sites and a lot of the basic functionality we have around site list management. Thank you, everybody.